"We're done here. Leave," said Stephen Colbert aggressively. In a shocking turn of events that has Hollywood and viewers buzzing, Tom Cruise was abruptly kicked off The Late Show after a heated exchange with host Stephen Colbert turned hostile. What began as a standard promotional interview for Cruise's latest blockbuster quickly descended into one of the most uncomfortable confrontations in late-night television history. The tension was palpable from the moment Tom Cruise walked onto the set of The Late Show with Stephen Colbert. Cruise, known for his megawatt smile and boundless energy, appeared slightly reserved as he took his seat opposite Colbert. The audience, sensing something was off, offered polite applause rather than their usual enthusiastic welcome. Colbert began with his typical monologue, throwing in several jabs about Cruise's height and his relationship with the Church of Scientology, topics known to be sensitive for the actor. While Cruise maintained his professional composure, a keen observer could spot the tightening around his eyes and the forced nature of his smile. "So, Tom, I hear your new movie involves you jumping off yet another tall building," Colbert said, with a smirk. "I guess when you're of a certain stature, everything looks taller, right?" The audience's uncomfortable laughter filled the studio as Cruise shifted in his seat. "Well, Stephen, the stunts are always about pushing boundaries. It's what audiences expect from a Mission Impossible film," Cruise responded diplomatically. Colbert seemed determined to provoke a reaction, continuing with increasingly pointed remarks. "Speaking of impossible missions, I've always wondered, is reaching items on the top shelf considered an impossible mission for you?" The host pantomimed stretching to reach something high, eliciting gasps and nervous laughter from the audience. Cruise's legendary control began to slip. "You know, Stephen, I came here to talk about a film that hundreds of talented people worked on for years, not to be the butt of tired jokes about my height." Rather than backing off, Colbert doubled down. "Oh, come on, Tom. For someone who believes in alien overlords, I'd think you'd have a thicker skin." The reference to Scientology crossed a line for Cruise, who visibly stiffened. "I'm happy to talk about my work, my career, even my personal fitness regimen," Cruise said, his voice taking on an edge. "But mocking anyone's spiritual beliefs crosses a line, don't you think?" The audience fell silent as Colbert leaned forward. "This is a comedy show, Tom. Nothing's off limits, especially not a religion founded by a science fiction writer." The temperature in the room seemed to drop several degrees. Cruise placed his hands on his knees, his knuckles whitening. "I've always respected you as a host, Stephen. I've come on your show multiple times. But this isn't comedy. It's disrespect dressed up as humor." Colbert's expression hardened. "Oh, I'm sorry. Did I sign an NDA before this interview prohibiting certain topics? Because that's what I hear happens with people in your organization." The cameramen exchanged nervous glances as the interview continued its downward spiral. Cruise, usually unflappable, was clearly struggling to maintain his composure. "Why don't we try to get back to discussing the film? That's what your viewers tuned in for." "Actually, I think they tune in for honest conversations," Colbert retorted. "And honestly, I've always wondered how someone as intelligent as you could fall for something like Scientology. Care to enlighten us?" At this point, several audience members audibly protested, with someone shouting, "Leave him alone!" The production assistant made a slashing motion across her throat, indicating they should cut to commercial, but Colbert waved her off. No, I think Tom can handle a few questions. After all, he's saved the world on screen dozens of times. Surely he can handle a late-night interview without his handlers stepping in." Colbert's tone had taken on an unmistakable hostility. Cruise took a deep breath, visibly attempting to center himself. "You know, Stephen, I've always believed that respect is fundamental in any interaction. I respect your right to your beliefs, your politics, your worldview, even when they differ from mine. I'd hope for the same courtesy in return." "Respect is earned, not given," Colbert shot back. And it's hard to respect someone who promotes a organization with such questionable practices. But hey, that's just my opinion, which I'm allowed to express on my show. The tension between the two men was so thick it seemed to press against the camera lenses. The director frantically signaled to cut to commercial, but Colbert continued, pushing. Let's talk about those non-disclosure agreements your church has people sign. Or maybe the Sea Organization. I've got plenty of questions that I think viewers would find fascinating. Cruz's legendary control finally snapped. This isn't an interview, Stephen. It's an ambush. And I won't sit here and let you mock my beliefs for ratings. He unpinned his microphone with deliberate calm. Oh, is this where you storm off? Classic celebrity move when the questions get too uncomfortable, Colbert taunted, his usual charm completely absent. Cruz stood up, his expression carved from stone. No, this is where I choose to remove myself from a disrespectful situation. Something I should have done 10 minutes ago. As Cruz turned to leave, Colbert called after him. Tell Zainu I said hi. The audience gasped collectively at the blatant provocation. Cruz paused, turned back slowly, and fixed Colbert with a stare that had chilled screen villains for decades. The actor's voice was quiet but carried throughout the now silent studio. You know, Stephen, I've faced bullies throughout my life. They all have one thing in common. They use humor to disguise cruelty. Your viewers deserve better than that. And so do your guests. The studio fell into shocked silence as the implications of what was unfolding hit everyone. One of Hollywood's biggest stars was walking off one of television's most popular late-night shows. The camera caught Colbert's expression, a mixture of anger and surprise, as though he hadn't expected Cruz to actually leave. Behind the scenes, producers were panicking. A production assistant rushed after Cruz while the director frantically signaled to cut to commercial. Colbert, seemingly realizing he had gone too far, called out, Tom, come on, it was just a joke. But it was too late. Tom Cruise had left the building, leaving behind a stunned audience and a host whose smug expression had been replaced by something resembling concern. As the show awkwardly cut to commercial, the damage was already done. Backstage, chaos erupted, as network executives were frantically called, and social media began to light up with reports of the confrontation. What would happen when they returned from the commercial break? How would Colbert address what had just occurred? And what would be the fallout from this unprecedented meltdown between one of Hollywood's biggest stars and late night's most powerful host? The longest commercial break in The Late Show history stretched on for nearly 7 minutes as chaos consumed the backstage area. Network executives were shouting into phones, producers were huddled in emergency consultation, and Colbert's team of writers exchanged worried glances. The host himself sat at his desk, tapping a pen impatiently against the polished wood, his expression alternating between defiance and concern. We can't just pretend it didn't happen, the head producer insisted, her voice strained. Everyone saw it. It's probably already trending on Twitter. Then we control the narrative, Colbert snapped back. He walked off my show because he couldn't handle tough questions. That's on him, not me. A junior producer nervously approached. Sir, we've got Paul Giamatti waiting in the green room. Should we bring him out as the replacement guest? Colbert nodded curtly. Yes, get him ready. And tell the band to play something upbeat when we return. I don't want the audience dwelling on Cruz's drama queen exit. Meanwhile, outside the studio, Tom Cruise was surrounded by his entourage as they made their way to the waiting SUV. His publicist was already in damage control mode, frantically making calls, while his longtime agent was red-faced with fury. This is unprecedented, the agent seethed. Colbert completely ambushed you. The network will hear about this. Cruz, however, had regained his composure, his face a mask of practiced calm. No statements tonight, he instructed his team. Let's see how Colbert handles the fallout first. As the commercial break finally ended, the cameras returned to a seemingly relaxed Stephen Colbert. though those who knew him well could spot the tension in his shoulders and the forced nature of his smile. "Welcome back, everybody," Colbert began, his voice slightly higher than usual. "So, that just happened. For those of you just joining us, Tom Cruise has stepped away. Apparently, some people can't handle a little late-night banter." He forced a chuckle that the audience didn't return. Instead of laughter, an uncomfortable silence filled the studio. Someone in the back row clearly shouted, "You went too far," causing several audience members to applaud in agreement. Colbert's expression darkened momentarily before he regained control. "Listen, folks, this is a comedy show. We ask the questions other people are afraid to ask. If celebrities can't handle that, well," he trailed off, noticing the audience's continued discomfort. The usual sycophantic laughter that followed his remarks was noticeably absent. "Anyway, we're thrilled to welcome our next guest, the incredible Paul Giamatti," Colbert announced with exaggerated enthusiasm as the band played the actor's entrance. Music. Giamatti walked on stage, clearly aware of the tension, offering an awkward wave to the subdued audience. As he sat down, the discomfort was palpable. "So, Paul," Colbert began, his voice overly bright, "your new film doesn't involve any controversial religions, so we should be good to go, right?" He attempted a joke that fell completely flat. Several audience members audibly groaned. Giamatti shifted uncomfortably. "Actually, Stephen, I've got to say, I was watching that interview from the green room and it was pretty rough." Colbert's smile faltered. "This wasn't part of the script." "Oh, come on, Paul. It was just a bit of fun." "Was it, though?" Giamatti challenged, showing unexpected backbone. "It seemed pretty personal to me. And I say that as someone who's been on the receiving end of jokes about my appearance for years. There's a line, you know." The audience erupted in supportive applause for Giamatti's candor. Colbert's face flushed as he realized he was losing control of his own show for the second time that night. "Well, I appreciate your perspective, Paul," Colbert said tightly. "But maybe we should focus on your film rather than playing armchair host." "Sure," Giamatti agreed mildly. "But I think what just happened is the more interesting story tonight, don't you? I mean, when was the last time you saw Tom Cruise lose his cool? The guy's famous for his professionalism." Outside the studio, the situation was exploding. Tom Cruise walk and Colbert bully were trending nationwide within minutes. Video clips of the confrontation were being shared at a viral pace, with most commenters expressing shock at Colbert's aggressive questioning and support for Cruise's decision to walk off. Cruise's phone was ringing non-stop, calls from other talk show hosts offering him a platform to tell his side, studio executives expressing solidarity, and even rival late-night personalities checking on him. The actor silenced his phone as his car pulled away from the studio, his thoughts already turning to how this incident would affect the promotion of his film. Back in the studio, the Giamatti interview continued awkwardly, with the actor repeatedly steering the conversation back to the elephant in the room despite Colbert's obvious attempts to move past it. "You know," Giamatti said thoughtfully, "I've been in this business a long time, and I've always felt that mutual respect was essential between an interviewer and guest." Colbert's smile had become a grimace. "Absolutely, Paul. Respect is important. Now, in your new film, because what I witnessed tonight," Giamatti continued, ignoring the redirect, "didn't look like respect to me. It looked like bullying for ratings." The audience applauded again, louder this time, and several people stood up. Colbert's producer was frantically signaling from offstage, drawing her finger across her throat. Cut to commercial. "Well, I think we have different definitions of respect," Colbert said, his voice tight with barely controlled anger. "But we'll have to leave it there for now. We'll be right back with more from Paul Giamatti after these messages." As soon as the cameras cut away, Colbert ripped off his microphone. "What the hell, Paul?" he hissed. "We've known each other for years. You're supposed to have my back here." Giamatti shrugged. I'm just being honest, Stephen. That was ugly what you did to Cruz. And I'm not going to pretend it wasn't. The commercial break couldn't come soon enough for the embattled host. In the control room, network executives were now physically present, having been summoned by urgent calls. Their expressions were grim as they reviewed the social media fallout in real time on their phones. "This is a disaster," the head of Late Night Programming muttered. "We're going to need a statement ready tonight. Something contrite, but not admitting full blame." "Colbert needs to apologize," another executive insisted. "The numbers don't lie. Public sentiment is overwhelmingly against him on this." Meanwhile, across town, Tom Cruise's team had secured an emergency booking on a rival late-night show that taped later in the evening. The host had agreed to push back their scheduled guests to accommodate the impromptu appearance. An unprecedented move that signaled just how significant this controversy had become in a matter of hours. As The Late Show prepared to return from commercial break, one question hung in the air. Could Colbert salvage the situation, or had his aggressive interrogation of one of Hollywood's most powerful stars just dealt a fatal blow to his reputation? The red light on the camera blinked back to life as The Late Show returned from its extended commercial break. The atmosphere in the studio had shifted dramatically, the usual electric excitement replaced by a tense, awkward energy that seemed to press down on everyone present. Audience members exchanged uneasy glances. The band played with noticeably less enthusiasm, and even the lighting seemed somehow dimmer. Stephen Colbert's smile was plastered on so tightly it looked painful. Paul Giamatti sat across from him, his expression neutral but resolute. Behind the scenes, network executives huddled near monitors, ready to cut the feed if necessary. "Welcome back to The Late Show," Colbert began, his voice overly controlled. "Before we continue our conversation with Paul, I'd like to address what happened earlier with Tom Cruise." He cleared his throat, clearly struggling with what he was about to say. "Sometimes in comedy, we push boundaries. Tonight, I may have pushed too far." It wasn't exactly an apology, and the audience's muted response made it clear they noticed the distinction. Someone in the back shouted, "Say you're sorry," causing a ripple of supportive applause. Colbert's eyes flashed with momentary anger, before he composed himself. "Look, folks, comedy is subjective. What crosses the line for one person might—" "Stephen," Giamatti interrupted gently, "I think people are just looking for some genuine accountability here." The host turned to his guest, clearly irritated by the interruption. "Paul, with all due respect, this is my show." "And that's exactly the problem," Giamatti replied calmly. "When did it become about you rather than creating a space where guests feel respected?" The audience erupted in applause, several people rising to their feet. Colbert's producer was making frantic cutting motions from off-stage, but it was too late. The situation had spiraled completely beyond control. Meanwhile, across town at a rival network studio, Tom Cruise was being fitted with a microphone. The competing late-night host, Jimmy Kimmel, greeted him warmly. "Thanks for coming on such short notice, Tom. For what it's worth, I thought what happened was completely unprofessional." Cruise nodded appreciatively. "I don't mind tough questions, Jimmy. I've been in this business long enough to expect them. But mockery disguised as interview? That crosses a line." Back at The Late Show, Colbert was attempting to regain control of his program, but Giamatti had effectively become the voice of the audience's discontent. "Comedy should punch up, not down," Giamatti was saying to enthusiastic applause. "And mocking someone's religious beliefs, regardless of what you personally think of them, isn't punching up. It's just mean." Colbert's face had turned an alarming shade of red. "I think we've spent enough time on this topic, Paul. Let's talk about your film." "Actually," Giamatti said, standing up and removing his microphone, "I don't think I can continue this interview in good conscience. Not until you acknowledge what really happened here tonight." The studio erupted in gasps as the second guest of the evening prepared to walk off. Colbert sat stunned, watching his show implode in real time. "Paul, don't be ridiculous." "It's not ridiculous to expect basic professional courtesy," Giamatti replied firmly. "Tom deserved better. Your audience deserves better. And frankly, you're better than what you showed tonight." With that, he placed his microphone on the desk and walked off stage. The unprecedented spectacle of two major celebrities walking off The Late Show in a single night sent shockwaves through the entertainment industry. Social media exploded, with the Colbert meltdown joining the already trending hashtags. Network phones rang off the hook with advertisers expressing concern about being associated with the increasingly toxic brand. "Cut to commercial," the head executive ordered from the control room. "And keep it there. The show's done for tonight." As the network hastily ran an extended commercial break, viewers at home speculated wildly about what was happening. Meanwhile, at Jimmy Kimmel's studio, Cruise was giving a measured, dignified interview that was being live-streamed to millions. "I've always believed that we should treat each other with respect, especially in public forums," Cruise was saying. "Disagree with my beliefs if you want. That's your right. But mockery isn't critique, and it's certainly not journalism." Kimmel nodded thoughtfully. "Do you think there's a path forward with Colbert after this?" Cruise considered the question carefully. "There's always a path forward if there's genuine accountability. This industry is built on relationships. Damaged ones can be repaired, but it takes sincere effort." The contrast between the chaos at Colbert's studio and the composed, professional atmosphere of Kimmel's interview couldn't have been more stark. Viewers were flocking to Kimmel's live stream in record numbers, while The Late Show remained in an extended commercial break that showed no signs of ending. Back at CBS headquarters, an emergency meeting was convened with the network, president, key executives, and Colbert's management team. The host himself sat silently at the end of the conference table, his earlier defiance replaced by the grim realization that he had severely miscalculated. "The numbers are catastrophic," the ratings analyst was saying. "We're seeing audience sentiment running 80% against Steven on this. Advertisers are already calling about pulling spots." "We need a genuine apology," the network president stated firmly. "Not a comedian's non-apology. A real one." Colbert looked up, finally speaking. "I was just doing what I always do. Pushing boundaries." "No," the president replied firmly. "You were being needlessly cruel for cheap laughs. And it backfired spectacularly." The next morning, the entertainment world awoke to a formal statement from CBS and Stephen Colbert. It was uncharacteristically direct. "I, Stephen Colbert, wish to extend my sincere apology to Tom Cruise for my behavior during last night's interview. My questions and comments crossed the line from comedy into disrespect. I failed as a host, and I failed my audience. I will do better." The apology was accompanied by an announcement that The Late Show would take a one-week hiatus for reflection and retooling. Industry insiders recognized this as network-mandated damage control. Tom Cruise, ever the professional, responded with characteristic grace. "I accept Stephen's apology and consider the matter closed. I look forward to meaningful conversations in the future." But the damage was done. When The Late Show returned, a week later, the ratings had plummeted. Colbert took the stage to a noticeably smaller and more subdued audience. His opening monologue was uncharacteristically humble. "Welcome back, everyone. Before we begin tonight, I want to talk about respect. It's easy in this business to forget that behind every joke, there's a real person. I forgot that recently, and I'm committed to remembering it going forward." The road to rebuilding trust would be long. Several A-list celebrities quietly rescheduled or canceled their appearances in the weeks that followed. The show's writers were instructed to dial back the more caustic elements of Colbert's persona. Network executives monitored the content more closely than ever before. 6 weeks after the infamous Cruise incident, as it had become known in industry circles, Tom Cruise made a surprise return to The Late Show. The audience fell completely silent as he walked on stage. Colbert stood to greet him, visibly humbled. "Thank you for coming back, Tom," Colbert said, the usual sarcasm absent from his voice. "Thank you for having me," Cruise replied evenly. "I believe in second chances." What followed was one of the most watched interviews in late-night history. A thoughtful, respectful conversation that touched on Cruise's film, his career, and even briefly on his spiritual beliefs without mockery or condescension. When it concluded, both men shook hands firmly. The entertainment media hailed it as a masterclass in reconciliation and professionalism. Cruise was praised for his willingness to return to potentially hostile territory, while Colbert received cautious commendation for his evident growth and newfound restraint. Though, The Late Show's ratings never fully recovered to their pre-incident heights. The Cruise reconciliation marked a turning point. Colbert emerged from the controversy a changed host, still witty and politically pointed, but with the cruelest edges of his comedy permanently blunted. The incident became a case study in entertainment journalism classes, a stark reminder that even in comedy, there are boundaries that shouldn't be crossed. As for Tom Cruise, his dignified handling of the affair only enhanced his reputation as one of Hollywood's most professional stars. His film went on to break box office records, with many attributing the surge in ticket sales to public sympathy following the Colbert confrontation. In the end, what began as an ugly display of disrespect became an unexpected catalyst for growth, a rare instance where Hollywood's typically scripted veneer fell away to reveal something more authentic and ultimately more valuable than empty entertainment, accountability, forgiveness, and genuine human connection.